Welcome to Data Skeptic, a podcast exploring the methods, use cases, and consequences of recommender systems. Okay, I got 3 apologies to do today. The first one goes to you, the listener. I know we've gotten a little irregular. My life's been a bit of a whirlwind, but all in the best of possible ways. We are getting back on it soon. My second apology goes out to our guest today, Aaron. In a parallel universe, Data Skeptic has already switched over to a brand new season. The topic there is all about being a student right now in the era of AI and transitioning into the workforce and what sort of jobs are out there. If you think that's an interesting idea and you think I'm making a mistake, you can write to Kyle at dataskeptic.com and let me know. We might come back around to it, but I got a whole different plan for this universe. There's a lot to say about recommender systems, and I don't feel like I've touched on every possible voice just yet, so we got a few really good ones in the chamber. And my third apology goes out to the band Run and Punch. It's their theme song you hear as the intro and outro for recommender systems. I think I told them I was going to always mention them in the credits, and then we didn't do credits. So big shout out to one of Chicago's best ska bands, Run and Punch. I'm actually going to get to go see them next month at Reggie's in Chicago, but you guys can check out Run and Punch on Spotify. Our theme song is called We've Never Met, their newest hit single. But before that, as a bit of an interlude, here's an episode of the season that almost was. I have a conversation with Aaron Payne about the MBA program he was in and a transition into an analytics role at Chick-fil-A.
Hello, my name is Aaron Payne. I'm an MBA student at Georgia Tech studying business analytics.
What brought you to business analytics?
I'm actually just started a new position at Chick-fil-A as a Senior Insights Analyst. So I'll serve there as an internal consultant for analytics and supply chain area. But I got my career started off in technical tax transformation, doing that at Ernst & Young. So I got into scripting in Python, doing data visualization. And from that point, I knew I wanted to continue in analytics, but also get back to Atlanta where I'm from. So I joined a hotel asset management company called Atrium Hospitality, where I did general analytics cross-functionally for operations, commercial, HR, finance, just doing ad hoc analytics as well as data visualization and some machine learning, trying to stay ahead of that AI curve for sure.
Have you had any learnings taking that skill of business analytics and applying it in such a variety of domains?
Yeah, so I think that especially working or going to school at Georgia Tech, all the different analytics classes that they offer. I've taken people analytics, I've taken analytics in just general data science using machine learning, doing operational descriptive analytics. And then that marries very well with some of the other curriculum they have there in terms of corporate strategy, figuring out how data can translate to insights. So we have this at Chick-fil-A, at least you have like data analytics, which is, your operational analytics, or maybe you're doing some data science projects. But Chick-fil-A likes to call it insights. And what do you do with those analytics? How do you take those analytics and turn them from analytics to insights, an action plan? So instead of a data science, you have a decision science. Or instead of a data analyst or a business analyst, you have a insights analyst. So that's what I kind of like to think about.
Can you share any details on some of the projects you worked on while getting your degree?
Yes. So one of the big ones, Georgia Tech is very big on experiential learning. So in addition to all of the learning that we've done in the classroom, there's also a big emphasis on taking that and doing real projects, partnering with real companies, using real data to kind of shape how companies operate and strategically move in their space. So one of the big projects that I worked on in one of the business analytics practicums I had the opportunity to take was with Comfama. So Comfama is a social services company in Colombia, and they have essentially affiliated population. So if you're employed in Colombia, you join a social services company, and they do all sorts of social works like education, after school care, things like that. So they have an affiliated population. So an affiliated population is just people who are signed up with them to receive those benefits. And they needed help forecasting what their affiliated population would look like, especially with all of the economic inconsistencies given the recent state of the pandemic and other economic factors being in Colombia. So they wanted a way to forecast their affiliated population a little bit more accurately. So I was tasked, along with my fellow teammates, to kind of partner with their data scientists, go through their data, and create a updated forecast for them using some advanced statistical and machine learning methodologies.
I definitely want to dive into methodologies, but at the start of it, I'm reminded of something you said earlier, that a big part of any work is the insights you get out of it. What is the forecast? What decision does that inform for them?
It's always fun to, at least in my mind, to think of like doing analytics, obviously being an analytics nerd, doing the data science and having fun kind of sticking your toe into that and working with a company to produce these outputs and working on this with a team tediously. But it really puts it in perspective how those types of forecasts go in and actually help real people. So obviously there's some challenges in Colombia, especially Antioquia, where Comfama is located, in that there's like rapid urbanization, there's some demographic shifts, there's rising cost, gentrification, all of these things that are affecting the ability for them to reliably forecast demand for these social services. So collaborating with them and being able to work and supply these updated forecasts really helps them in terms of operational excellence is something that is front of mind when we're doing this. So how can we help Confama operate more efficiently, which in turn directly affects the people who they serve? So I think that especially when working with a company like Confama that does social services, thinking about all the work that they do and all the planning that goes into that, and how just one hitch or one miscalculation can result in real people, not receiving benefits that are essential to them, especially in a place like Antioquia. So I think that having that front of mind and thinking of the end user is not just the data science or the analytics teams that we're serving or we're consulting with, but how they're then taking that information and it's affecting how they run their company and how they run their business and how they're able to provide for real people in need in those situations. So that's really awesome to kind of have that backdrop to the all the analytics work that we do at Georgia Tech.
There's this adage that gets thrown around a lot that say something like data scientists spend 80% of their time cleaning the data. And, your percentage may vary, but to what degree was that true in a project like this? And what were some of the steps to get from where you started to where you were going?
For the uninundated, obviously, Colombia, English is not their first language. So, in case you did not know that, so one of the big things with the data handoff was that it was not in English, and we did thankfully have someone on our team who did speak the language, but it was hard for a lot of us to translate. So, I mean, that's not traditional data cleaning, but that is something that is kind of just unexpected with a real life project with a real company, is that it was just a completely different language. So a lot of the stuff we didn't even know what it was until we had to translate it. And thankfully we were able to do that. But just understanding, and I think that it goes into those descriptive statistics of looking at descriptive statistics for these different variables that we were getting, determining if there were outliers, understanding if these outliers were legitimate. Some of these, obviously, it being in Colombia, there's not some great technological infrastructure. So some of these numbers were like manually typed in, and some of these numbers were inaccurate. So there's not only data gaps, especially when we're looking for exogenous variables, which I'm sure we'll get into as a part of the methodology for our project, but even with the case sensitive information that Confama gave to us, making sure that we were combing over, doing our due diligence with creating these descriptive statistics, understanding kind of the seasonality effects and the trend effects, understanding COVID effects, and how all of that needs to be accurate for us to produce an accurate forecast. It's kind of, like they say, garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure that the data that we're getting is not only robust enough to create good predictions, but also accurate and representative of reality. So it was a task, but we had a great team around us and the data scientists with Comfama, and they were able to, quickly correct a lot of the internal errors that are questions that we had. And we were able to also do some data interpolation, which ultimately gave us a pretty accurate forecast that we're excited about.
Well, there are no shortage of techniques and tools and methods for doing forecasting.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone's got their own opinion about it. How did you and the team center in on what was the best choice for your problem?
Yeah, so I think that this is one of the things that is always interesting with working with these analytics projects is that you have to think about your stakeholders, but then you also have to think about, like you said, there's a bunch of different methodologies out there. So one of the things that was important for the data science team at Confama was interpretability. So they wanted for this not to be some black box prediction model where they didn't really have visibility into what's running the predictions. So what we did was, and this is a little bit more art than science, as like I mentioned in one of the books that I read, where you kind of have to trial and error or use multiple models and kind of see which ones produce the best output. And then also taking and relying on Confama as industry experts to kind of guide us through their current state of work. And, Isaac Newton said, standing on the shoulders of gas giants, making sure that we're not just starting from scratch here. We have some good base skeleton to go off of. So not just ignoring what they were working on with their analytics team and data science team, but kind of taking from that and then adding on our own twist, being robust in testing, but also being mindful of the end user, the interpretability that was necessary for these models, and then also the time constraint of, this isn't our jobs are kind of like doing this in the evening as a part of the MBA program. So we only get one semester really to work on this, and having to put out something that we're proud of in that limited time, in that lead up time is very important as well to be mindful of when choosing a model.
And can you give us any hints as to the method you ended up picking and what worked best for your case?
Yeah. So originally, the data science team at Confama, they started off using an ARIMA model, which is just a autoregressive moving average model, a very renowned statistical forecasting technique that many people who follow statistics probably are familiar with. We then decided on an ensemble model. Obviously, that there's great parts about all different types of models and reasons why you'd want to use a variety of different models. But we did end up using a form of ARIMA model, Cerimax, but then we sprinkled a little data science magic with a machine learning model, and we created an ensemble model where we created a formula using the RMSE to weight the forecast predictions, and ultimately we're able to greatly reduce the residuals of our forecast in our test section by doing so. So that was awesome.
You had mentioned you guys picked up the Cerimax model, or I think one of those.
Yes.
So if they began using ARIMA, pretty good choice, as you mentioned, very popular, very used in industry, but they want to take it a step further. What does your model choice add that ARIMA lacked?
This is a great question. So one of the things that we looked at when we're doing that descriptive analytics, understanding the data and where opportunities lie to improve the forecast, seasonality and trend were one of the main things that we noticed in the model, especially variability within 2020, which is COVID, as well as 2021 after effects of COVID year. So using the Cerimax model, so ARIMA is, like we talked about, very standard. But Cerimax is this seasonal autoregressive moving average with exogenous variables. So in addition to the data that we received from Confama, we were also able to use exogenous variables, economic indicators that we were able to pull from Colombia's Bureau of Labor Statistics called DANE. So it's very similar to labor statistics here. They have economic indicators. And what we actually decided to do was to increase the level of detail through one of Dane's, the way they calculate the data is into departments, or what we might consider industries. As you might already have the inclination or the thought is that these different industries probably act very differently. Obviously, Colombia being a third world country, there's a lot of construction, manual labor, emphasis on those types of blue collar kind of industries are the main ones that Comfama serves. But they also still do have these technological industries. They have academia industries, other industries. So what we decided to do was using Dane's 12 department framework is to break these economic indicators, employment rate, ISE, which is just an economic indicator, GDP, all these various economic indicators as exogenous variables, and layer that into the base ARIMA. So essentially, just to get a little bit more technical, is that you have all these different combinations of ARIMA. So you have the lowercase p, the lowercase d, lowercase q, which are just the non-seasonal, autoregressive, differencing, and moving averages effects. But then you also have those capital P, capital D, capital Q, which when you get into seasonal or Remax models, are those seasonal counterparts for those lowercase PDQs. So what we were able to do was we kind of did a study in our studio where we were able to compare all of the different forms of seasonal differencing and effects and find the ones that had the least squared error or root mean squared error. And we were able to use those and then ensemble that with the XGBoost machine learning model. And then there's a great visibility within those ARIMA models in terms of what's driving versus seasonality trend. And then you have some noise, white noise effect, which we hope is small, which was in our case, thankfully. But then we also can use some of the data visualization to kind of show the importance variables or the importance metrics for these XGBoost machine learning models so that there's visibility on both sides. And we found that we used some other models that we played around with, obviously exponential smoothing. We actually used the profit package, which is a very popular forecast model as well. But we ended up getting the best prediction variables with this and working very closely with the industry experts with Comfama. We were able to use those exogenous variables, run some multicollinearity tests to make sure that we're not having overlapping variables in our model. And ultimately, that methodology is what we found. Obviously, we didn't test everything under the sun given the time constraint, but we found that that was a really good model that gave us a prediction interval that Confama team was very happy with and improved upon the just base ARIMA model.
It seems like this is a really novel, like data science for good kind of example. Are you aware of, or have any thoughts on other things going on in the similar space? And if you've seen any other community initiatives or excited about other projects you might want to call out?
I mean, I would be remiss if I did not mention, like I said, I just recently started at Chick-fil-A and I've been going through their orientation process, essentials, which has been really great. And I didn't know this before coming, but one of Chick-fil-A's aspirations is to be, by 2030, to be one of the most caring companies in the world, it's a very big goal and a very lofty one, but it's one that they're working to do. And just seeing the data science or decision science team, the analytics teams that are working and how they're making decisions with supply chain. How are we moving? How are we being environmentally cautious of how we operate, how we open delivery centers? And the end goal in mind is ultimately the customers and the emphasis to care, the initiatives that they're able to do with their financial stewardship through their operational excellence. I think it's something that a lot of companies, frankly, aren't concerned with. I think as time has gone on, companies have gotten more concerned with that, but it's something just core values is something that's been really front of mind with everything that's been presented to me coming in. So that's something that I would have to shout out Chick-fil-A for and the way that they're kind of moving in the business world with analytics and how they're empowering that to make decisions that increase that operational effectiveness, which reduce cost, but then don't transfer that to themselves, but increase customer delight through that, which is really awesome.
If I understood correctly, you were working while in school. Do you have any advice for people following a similar path?
Yeah, do it before you have kids and get married. That's my big one. Think I'm still going through the process of my MBA. I started in spring 2024, and I will finish in May 2026. And it's a gauntlet. People go at their own pace. Some people try to knock it out as soon as possible. Some people take it one day at a time, and it really exposes you to the sacrifices that are necessary for career growth. And I have admiration for. I'm single and don't have any kids, but some of my cohort, they have families, they run businesses, they are married, and balancing all of that is really a struggle. So I think that the best plan is one that you spend time making. Oftentimes things don't go to plan, but if you have a plan, you're already 3 steps ahead. And we live in the information age. So I would just encourage anyone who's interested in pursuing education or anything in their spare time to have a plan. Don't go into it blind. Take some time. There's such a wealth of information. And if you focus on like building a network, reaching out to people who have gone through it, you'd be surprised how many goodwill intentioned people who are a wealth of information to give you. Something that I heard is that a smart man learns from his own mistakes and a wise man learns from others. So I think that leveraging the wealth that we have as just a society and seeking that knowledge would be very helpful in terms of pursuing something like an MBA or a master's degree in the evenings, because it definitely, you have those days where you're questioning everything when you get home at 10 o'clock and you need to walk your dog and you haven't made dinner yet and you got to wake up early tomorrow. So definitely those plans, they make it much easier for sure. So I would suggest that.
Well, the presence of COVID in the time period you're looking out, I mean, it didn't make your life any easier, right? That's a weird, anomalous kind of event.
Yeah.
Maybe a really pessimistic person would argue it's a total anomaly and you've just got to throw out that data as an outlier.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely an option that you can do, is just like remove the data, pretend like it didn't happen. But ironically enough, because it is Colombia, we actually talked to the data science team, and there are actually huge fluctuations very similar to COVID that happen throughout time, especially when government changes hands. Stuff like that can actually be very detrimental to the affiliated population. So we didn't use those historical data points from like a change in government regime or something like that, but we actually created an indicator variable for COVID so that they could use that in the future of like a economic disruptive event, because unfortunately that is something that Colombia is still impacted by, on a basis that maybe a forecast in the US, you might want to remove COVID year, but it's actually kind of helpful, ironically, using the business context that we got from the Comfama team to include something like COVID in there to understand that volatility of a big economic event like that.
What's next for you?
As I mentioned, I did just begin a new role at Chick-fil-A. I'm continuing to work and study to attain my MBA at Scheller College of Business at Georgia Tech. I'm actually moving from general analytics into supply chain analytics at Chick-fil-A. So learning a new industry, learning new business rules, understanding there's a lot that goes into the chicken business is what I've learned in a very short amount of time. So drinking out of a fire hose for the moment. And I think that, long-term future goals is to graduate from Scheller, continue working at Chick-fil-A, and then just vertically grow within the analytics data science space, being more traditional analytics, and then getting into these machine learning AI space is something that's very exciting to me. Agentic AI is something that I believe on the horizon or it's even here now. And just finding ways to implement that into our workflow, I think that that's something I'm really excited to learn, and something that I feel both at my day job and then my learnings at Scheller, I think are preparing me in a really monumental way for that. So that's kind of what's next for me, short to long term. And, hopefully, kind of the role that I'm after ultimately is like a business data science, bridging the gap between business decisions and more rigorous data science algorithms. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. So wish me luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're at the foot of the mountain, I think, in the opportunity there. So lots to be done in all industries over time.
Of course.
Aaron, is there anywhere listeners can follow you online?
I don't have social media, but I do have LinkedIn. So, feel free to shoot me a connection on LinkedIn, Aaron Payne. I should pop up Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. That should get you there.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your work.
Yes, no. Thank you so much for having me and for taking the time as well. And I wish you, great success on your podcast. I think you're 580 something episodes. So let's get, another 580 at least.
Thank you very much. Cool.
Oh, my pleasure.